Time once again for XRL's Realistic Racing League to get underway. Per usual, I'm your host, Insane Leader 13, and we're going to be looking at a race here at one of my favorite tracks on the entire Formula One schedule at Spa-Francorchamps in the country of Belgium. Real quickly, we'll run down the list of the drivers who are here. There may be one or two that will show up in the middle of Q1. I wouldn't put money on it, but that may be a possibility. In the Mercedes team, they're being represented by Level 6 Beastie and Dave Ewart 23. In the Scuderia Ferrari team, it's Ryan Hurricane and Mr. Anderson, 1872. The Red Bull team is being represented by Torpedo and Kinsey Retro, while McLaren is being represented by Danny JJ A02 and XRL Low. The AlphaTauri team is being represented by Flesh 2020 1390 and XRL Ozda. The Alfa Romeo team is being represented by Boothie 116 and Hazel. Renault is being represented by XRL Zola. Tracing Point is being represented by Higsby 97. Haas is being represented by Elfin Starfish 19. And Williams is being represented by Frisbee Lee. That is currently your lineup for today's event. Again, there may be more drivers who will show up a little bit later, but I myself am not betting on it. We're looking at a slightly smaller field. Q3 qualifying, we'll likely only see one driver get eliminated. Oh, and as I say that, someone else just may have joined. It says there are more people in the lobby now, so we might see one more person joining. Yes, the other driver in the Haas team is going to be Schumacher SF7. So we'll see 2 eliminations in Q3 before we get into Q2 properly. Very quickly, going to go ahead and pull up the point standings for the series as we prepare to load onto the circuit itself. When it comes to the Drivers' Championship, at the bottom is still XRL Ozda, Collieboy, and PPR Venom. All 3 of them have yet to earn points. Elfin Starfish has earned a single point. 16th in the point standings is Level 6 Beast. He has 6 points, while Higsby 97 has 12 points. He is 15th. 14th is Mr. Anderson. He has 17 points, while 13th is XRL Path with 28. Kinsey Retro has been staying pretty consistent with his haul of 34 points that he's kept since the earlier parts of the season. It's been a little bit of a drought for him since. XRL Steel has 37 points, while XRL Ultimate has 38 points. There is a tie for 8th in the point standings between XRL Wax and Smoothie 25. They both have 46 points. Young Maneuver sprung massively up the grid order with his win last week. We now see him with 61 points. He's just 5 out from Hazel, who has 66 points. There is a tie for 4th in points with XRO Low and Pinkwell both having 83 points, and just 3 more points ahead of them is XRO Zola with 86 points. So a very interesting points battle we'll be looking at between 3rd and 5th. Then there is your 2 championship contenders. Ryan Hurricane was able to salvage a good run out of last week, came home with a good result, and that coupled with Danny JJ02 means that he's been able to move closer, although he hasn't taken the points lead back. Ryan Hurricane has 141 points in his Ferrari, while Danny JJ02 has 153 in the McLaren. Both of our championship contenders have been going back and forth. We'll see one week one driver completely collapses and the other one excels, and then the next week the exact opposite happens. It's not been a easy championship fight, to say the least, for any of them. The 2 of them continue to slug it out. Real quickly, we're also going to go ahead and look at the Manufacturers' Championship, the other half of the championship battles within XRL leagues. From the bottom to the top, Alfa Romeo has 48 points, while Mercedes has 51. The AlphaTauri team has 74 points, while Red Bull has 78. Williams in 6 has 83. Then you get to the teams with triple-digit points. Haas has 123 points. Racing Point has 153. Renault has 174. McLaren has slipped a bit to 2nd. They are now only 182 points. They are 4 points out from Scuderia Ferrari, who have 186 points. As a team, Ferrari seems to be a little bit better put together thus far compared to what we have seen from the Renault when it comes to the team championships. So anyways, preparing to load on to Spa properly. 17 cars here. It's going to be very interesting. Spa-Francorchamps is a very large track, one of the largest on the entire schedule. As you see, Dave Ewart now beginning the run down pit lanes. We are on board with him, but ahead of him is one of the Alfa Romeos. Boothie 116 will be the first driver to come out onto the circuit. Boothie has been a tale of feast and famine this entire season. The biggest example of that is at Catalunya, where he absolutely dominated throughout the entirety of qualifying, and even jokingly stated that he may have been in a car that was too high for his ability. Only for the race itself to go completely sideways. He did not get a good start, got buried in traffic, and Yes, he was not able to take home any points whatsoever. It's been a very, very feast and famine event for Boothie from the start of a day to the end of a day. We've already seen plenty of drivers already on their way out. We see XRL Ozza, who has already come out of the Al Rouge Rodillion complex and now on that long back straightaway. There's also Dave Ewar, who I earlier said was coming out. There's XRL Lowe and the other McLaren trying to help his teammate Danny get good data for this qualifying session and try to get some good points for the team championship. Higsby 97 is also on the track right now, and you also can see that level 6 Beastian is now beginning the slow run down the pit lane as well, as is Danny, your points leader, who has just come out of his pit box a little bit farther back. So it's going to be a very, very interesting day in qualifying today. Bright, sunny, track is going to be in almost perfectly optimum conditions, and we aren't anticipating rain to show up for a little bit of time here. This is Elfin Starfish and the Haas as he is making the run down. The highest part of the track is pretty much at the long back straightaway, and then you spend well over a mile just going slowly downhill through various semi-technical or fully technical corners. It makes it for a very, very difficult scenario. This corner right here that Elfin Starfish is going around isn't really one unified corner. It's two different corners with two very distinctly different apexes. It's extremely difficult in any car to really make it work. And while a lot of people would talk about Spa's great corners being Al Rouge and Rodillion, I would argue that the entirety of Sector 2 here is an absolute wonderful test for both the driver and the setup of a Formula 1 machine. And it looks like Higsby has gone ahead and aborted the lap that he was in the middle of. A very interesting decision, to say the least, but that seems to be what is going on as he is brought back into the pit lane. I don't see any damage on the car, but it is a very strange thing, to say the least. This here is level 6 Beastian. He is in the Mercedes. He is alone on the... He is not alone on the team right now. Dave Ewar is sharing with him, but his normal teammate is not able to show up today. So Beastian trying to represent. We're just going to go quiet and ride on board with a full lap here with level 6 Beastian in the Mercedes around Spa. Has a full lap on board with level 6 Beastian here at Spa-Francorchamps. It's a time of 146.024, third fastest of the 4 times that have been set thus far. Right now, McLaren is dominating on the top of the sheets, both of their times being within the 144 range, as XRL Lowe is second, and Danny JJ02 is currently at the top. I didn't catch what it was, but something happened to the Haas of Schumacher SF97 earlier. Now he's invalidated his lap, and then Elfin Starfish also had an incident in Sector 2 that caused him to be really slow, and I'm sure you saw while we were riding on board with Beastian some yellow flags in Sector 2. That was for his hold-up. However, we have not been able to get any data as to what caused that issue. Schumacher F97, as you see him making the way downhill. On the run down to the Al Rouge Rodillion Complex, one of the most famous and at the same time most infamous corner complexes in all of motorsports, Mazda goes to the top of the 144.248, a very respectable time to say the least. This is Ryan Hurricane. He is your secondary challenger in the points, not leading the points yet, but he did have a very good run compared to his rival. Yesterday, he'd be looking to further capitalize on that to try and make a serious lunge for the top today. A little bit farther behind him, you can see the Alfa Romeo. That is Fletch. Fletch is in the middle of an outlap right now. Even though it says it's invalid, it doesn't really matter as long as you don't invalidate it in the last corner or two. 11 minutes still left in the session. One of the benefits of qualifying here is that this track is so large, especially true once you get to Q2 and Q3, but even in Q1, it's very rare to actually get your times held up by someone else unless they have an incident somewhere on the racetrack. Oh, and as I say that, I believe we just saw that is Mazda who has had an incident on the racetrack as he has gone around on a cooldown lap. He's back underway now, no damage to that Honda, but definitely a bit of a frustration for him to say the least. But again, he is still currently on the top of the timesheets. This is Schumacher SF7, almost said 97, SF7, as he comes out of that final corner in that chicane, runs more like a king in the chicane. It's like two really awkward kings put together, but Schumacher puts a time of 145.387 onto the board. That splits the two Ferraris of Ryan Hurricane and Mr. Anderson. Torpedo and Starfish are both on outlaps. Fletch is in the middle of a flyer lap, as is Higsby, as we see Higsby coming onto the start-finish line straight right now. The DRS pops open, and at the line is good enough for 5th, so he knocks Schumacher down a peg. Frisbee in the Williams is in the middle of a lap, but he is extremely slow right now, and I'm going to guess that he is just going to wait until there's a little bit more clean lap, and he will go for a real attempt the following circuit. One of the drivers who got by him was Fletch, as Fletch is in the middle of a lap right now. He is anticipating himself to be the 12th driver to set a time in the session. That is if Elfin Starfish doesn't make it first after Fletch and Frisbee invalidate laps. Hopefully that doesn't happen, though. Oh, and Boothie has retired from the session. And it's right there in the Al Rouge Rodillion Complex. We don't have a very good view of it right now. But it looks like something has happened to Boothie going up through the Al Rouge Rodillion Complex, and the car is stalled right in the middle of the racetrack. That's no bueno. And you can see for just the briefest of moments there, I know it's a virtual game, but I'll go ahead and do it. Thank God for the halo, because the tire on that Alfa Romeo was setting right over where the driver's head would be. So that looked like it was a very nasty hit, and one that would have been very, very bad in more traditional circumstances. So now we know one of the drivers who will not advance in the next round is going to be Boothie 116, as Torpedo and Elfin Starfish are still both in the middle of laps right now. The other thing, though, is that Dave Ewart, Frisbee 2, and Kinsey Retro are all in the pits right now, and they all have yet to set lap times. If they don't get lap times set soon enough, though, we might not even see a full field of 15 drivers make it into Q2. Again, I wouldn't bet on that happening, but that is a possibility. But right now, Torpedo has invalidated the lap he was in the middle of. Starfish is in the flyer right now. Also, while we were focusing on that, Ryan Hurricane beat Mazda for the top time with a 144.167, and then right afterwards, the other AlphaTauri, a Fletch 2020-1390, went and beat Ryan Hurricane, and he did that by only 0.02 of a second. Elfin Starfish sets a lap time of 145.291. That is the 8th fastest thus far. Level 6 Beastin is in an outlap, as is his teammate Dave Ewart, who has just come out of the pits right now. Gotta be very careful on the cold tires going uphill here. You can hear him briefly laying out of the throttle, just trying to be very careful at the moment. And there has been something that has happened to your second highest qualifying driver, Ryan Hurricane. He has had an incident in Sector 2, and there is very significant wing damage to the front of that Ferrari right now. So that is definitely not looking very good whatsoever for him. Elfin Starfish is extremely slow on the back straightaway right now, trying to get some clean air around him. And Dave Ewart and Frisbee and Kinsey Retro are all now on out laps. This is Kinsey Retro going through Sector 2 right now. Frisbee and Dave Ewart are both in Sector 2 also, but they're closer to the start of it than the end of it right now. Kinsey has a Renault of XRL Zola behind him. Zola does not have a teammate for today's event. Whoa! Okay, Kinsey. Kinsey saw Zola coming, and he just went off track in the most aggressive way possible to give Zola as much room as physically capable, but has a lot more daring than I would have felt comfortable with, especially because that was completely offline. Thank you, camera angle, for showing us a green hill that tells us absolutely nothing. We are not playing Sonic the Hedgehog 1. Here we are. Kinsey comes out of that final corner and will begin his next flying lap. Zola has set a time of 144.660. It'll be interesting to see what Kinsey can do. Meanwhile, here comes Frisbee and Dave Ewart. Frisbee, quote, invalid, but it's an outlap, doesn't matter. He's going to be the next driver to set a time here, or at least attempt to be the next driver to set a time. And Torpedo is out on the circuit in the middle of a lap, but he is going extremely, extremely slow, and the lap is invalid as well. And this track takes you almost 2 full minutes to get around, so he will have to rush to get into the pit lane to just refuel, put new tires on, and get out there. It's going to be very difficult as it stands right now for Torpedo to get an actual flying lap in, and his teammate Kinsey has just gone into the wall. A massive accident, or at least a massive shunt, but somehow all 4 tires are still on that Red Bull, and he is able to continue. Kinsey just needs to keep a lap going, because as it stands right now, he might still be able to qualify into Q2 if he can just get a lap in and a lap recorded, because the situation with his teammate Torpedo is extremely up in the air right now. While Torpedo's got it underway now, he is going full bore, going downhill now. Now up to the Al Rouge Rodillion complex, shoots out and onto that long back straightaway. Meanwhile, Dave Ewart and Frisbee are both in the middle of the laps as well, but Frisbee has the fuel light flashing. It's unknown if he's going to have enough fuel in that Williams to make a full lap happen here. If Kinsey Retro comes in and pits, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to actually set a flyer lap as well. So the 2 Red Bulls in a little bit of an interesting conundrum right now, and we don't know if either of them will even be able to set proper times before the session is over. Zola retires from the session in the pits. He feels no need to continue pushing. Frisbee out of the final corner and to the line. Ozda retires from the session as well, and Frisbee goes up to 8th, 144.959, and this is Dave Ewart in the other Mercedes. His teammate Levels Expedient is 9th. What will Dave set? He will set a lap time that is good enough for 14th, 145.693. So if we see somebody get knocked out, he would be the one on the bubble. But right now, Kinsey is in the pit lane. They're repairing the damage. Torpedo is trying to get a lap in right now. The time he needs to beat is 145.693. Hazel is beginning an outlap because he feels that it's a little bit too close for comfort. He wants to have a little bit more of a buffer when it comes to time and positions regarding getting knocked out. Here comes Torpedo at the line. He will be the 16th driver to set a lap time to the top, 143.997. That is a massive shakeup I don't know if anyone was anticipating. So we know the Red Bulls have capability. Will Kinsey be able to get on track in time to set a flyer lap? That is going to be the big question. That, and what can Dave Ewart and Hazel do? Dave Ewart is on a cooldown lap right now, and I don't know if he's going to have enough fuel in the tank to go for one more flying attempt on this set of tires. Hazel's in the middle of an outlap right now, and where he is on track, he should be able to rip off 2 really fast laps if he deems it necessary. Those are the drivers, Hazel, Dave Ewart, and Kinsey Retro. They are in the hot seat. Kinsey now out on track, and he is going to try once more to set a lap. He will be the last driver to set a lap in the session if he can do it. And he needs to set a time of 145.693 or better in order to make it into the next round. This is his outlap right now. He should have enough time to get 1 flyer lap in and maybe make another attempt afterwards if the car isn't damaged. Hazel in the Alpha, coming down these high-speed bends in a not-quite straightaway section of the circuit. His teammate Boothie had an accident that knocked him out of the session. And Mr. Anderson, Oh my goodness, Mr. Anderson has had an incident. Mr. Anderson has just crashed out of the session. And he had a time, it wasn't super close to being knocked out, but now we have had 2 DNFs on track here. I can't see it because I wasn't able to get a good view of it, sadly. But 2 Ferrari-powered cars have had accidents now and have taken them both out. So now Kinsey can just be very calm. He could set a time of 2 minutes and 15 seconds and would still make it into Q2. So there is no real headache or hassle for Kinsey to make it into Q2, as both Mr. Anderson and Boothie have massive incidents here in qualifying session 1. Here we are, Kinsey beginning his flying lap right now. His teammate Torpedo has come into the pits. Danny is in the middle of an outlap as well, as he seems to think that he might try and go for a faster lap time. There's not a whole lot of direct benefit to going for a faster lap time in Q1 if you're already guaranteed to make it into the next session. Right now, the big focus is on Kinsey. Is he going to be able to keep everything together? And there we are. It looks like Danny is going to retire into the pits, knowing that there's no point in pushing. But yeah, Kinsey is just trying to set a lap time that will be legal. This is the same section of the circuit right here where he had an accident in his first attempt that knocked off a chunk of that front wing. No issues this time, though. Keeping it well off the curbs in these downhill sections. The clock is up. Hazel in the middle of another lap, and Schumacher F7 is also in the middle of a lap as well. Dave Ewart has come into the pits. Higsby is in the middle of a lap as well. Here. This is our main focus. Can Kinsey actually set a clean time before the session is up? Only a few more corners left for him to navigate. And he will be the last driver to cross the line. Well, not except for Hazel and Schumacher, but of drivers who haven't set a time. Oh, came very close to invalidating a lap there. And it's not a very incredible lap, but it doesn't need to be. A 146.843 will be more than enough to get him into the session. Or at least it should be, unless I misunderstand things, but Kinsey should be able to make it in the next session because Mr. Anderson and Boothie will not be able to advance. Schumacher sets a time of 145.387, and Hazel's in the middle of a cool-down lap right now. And with very low fuel, it's not like he's going to actually change anything. So yeah, the question now is just going to be, will Kinsey be able to set a proper... Was the time that Kinsey set proper and fast enough to get him in? Because it's slower than the times that both Mr. Anderson and Boothie had set. However, the two of them have no chance of making it in. But here's the other thing, though. If you're going to go off of the faster times that those two set, Dave Ewart shouldn't be able to make it in because his time is slower than Mr. Anderson. So, again, I would hope and anticipate that Kinsey would make it into the next session. As we see Hazel bring it into the pits now, and the session 1 comes to a close for qualifying. So now we'll see, does Kinsey get into the next session? As we scroll on down to the bottom, no, the game will not let Kinsey retro in, but will let Dave Ewart in, which is a very silly decision. But Dave Ewart in the Mercedes makes it in, as a Schumacher in the Haas, Hazel in the Alpha, Starfish in the Haas, Beastie in the Merc, Frisbee in the Williams, Zola in the Renault, Higsby in the Tracing Point, Danny and Lowe in the McLarens, with Ozda in the AlphaTauri sandwiching them, Ryan Hurricane in the Ferrari, Fletch in the other AlphaTauri, and then Torpedo at top in the Red Bull. And here's the other thing I think that's very interesting to take note of. The gap from the fastest time to the slowest time that got in was well over a second and a half. So we are not looking at a very close spread in times whatsoever at the end of Q1. Again, Q1 isn't the greatest representation of what may or may not happen once you get to Q2 and Q3, but it's still very rare to see such a large spread of times. But with that said, the fact that this track is so large and there are so many variables to it, what might only be a 10th or 1500 seconds of difference on another circuit can easily extend and somersault into being a 3/4 second difference on a track like this. So right off the bat, it looks like several drivers, although they may have started this session on softs, they're immediately telling their teams, hey, throw on the medium tire compounds. We want to have good tires for this session. That will get us a good start in the main session as we see our first driver coming out into the circuit. And that looks like it is XRL Ozda, who is in the Alpha Tari. Coming around the very, very awkward and janky entry onto the straightaway. It now begins warming his tires up on the run down the straight. See him just warming the car up right now. You can see a train of cars. Look at this train of cars here. Frisbee is right in the middle of them, but both of the McLarens are in that. There's a Haas in that, a Williams of Frisbee already in that, and then you have a Mercedes in the back as well. So that is a cluster of cars, to say the least. Here we are, coming into the party right now with us is Boothie116. Boothie, go ahead, include your audio. Real quick question. What happened in Al Rouge and Rodillion there in qualifying session 1?
I was looking at my phone and didn't realise I was at the top of the hill. Goofy. Then crashed into the wall. It did not go well.
Well, do you think you'll be able to bounce back from that in the race itself?
Not even slightly. Not at my pace. My best hope is that other people crash a lot and I end up 10th by default.
Alright, well, very honest response from Boothie. Thanks very much for sharing. And let this be a message to all of you who are watching. Don't look at your phone while driving any sort of machinery, whether it be a Toyota Prius or Formula 1 car, your workplace's forklift, or, and we see XRLO doing a little bit of drift out of the final corner, or driving a simple garbage truck. Do not be distracted by looking at other screens. So anyways, Lowe in the McLaren now began his flyer lap, going downhill. But the first driver that will actually try and set a lap time in this session will likely be Ozda, as he is already in Sector 2 right now. And that is your points leader, Danny JJ802, who's a little bit behind. Right now, this field seems split between mediums and softs, but only one driver who has a soft equipped is actually on track, and that is Dave Ewart. Everyone else is currently with the medium tire compounds, who is on track. Purple Sector 2 for Ozda. Sector 3, you have one 90-ish degree corner, and then it's a lot of straights interlocked by high-speed, full-throttle corners, and then your two really, really awkward corners. They're like kink chicanes. I don't know what you want to call them. They're very, very awkward. They're pretty much the only thing that really breaks up the flow here at Spa. But that's what Ozda has navigated his way through. He will set the time to beat for the session on the mediums, 144.454. And right afterwards, this is Danny JJ802. He will come across the line with a time of 144.176. Dave Ewart has invalidated the lap he was in the middle of. It seems to be a moderately competitive lap as well, so he's not going to be happy with that. And it seems like track limits are also struck Hazel. This is Frisbee. He will be the next driver to set a time in the session, 145.459, joined right afterwards by Elfin Starfish, 156.087, so something did not go right for him. Lowest set a time of 144.956. Fletch is in the middle of a lap right now. He should be the 6th driver to set a time in this session. Now, because we only have 14 people who made it into Q2, that means only 4 of them will be knocked out. And we should still see a full field of 10 cars going into Q3. Oh my goodness! A humongous accident by Fletch! The car got a little bit powered down coming on the curves, and it went right to the inside wall and jumped 60 degrees up into the air. A humongous accident. And Fletch, who set the fastest time in Q1, will not be contending for the pole today. A massive accident. And we're going to try and talk with Fletch here, but a humongous crash will take him out of the session. Whoa, that was a shunt. I'm going to try and bring him into the session real quickly to see what happened from his perspective. This is Schumacher, who's invalidated the lap he's currently in the middle of. And Elfin Starfish has just retired from the session as well. Elfin Starfish has crashed out. So we just have had 2 DNFs in the session, and we barely are into it. Anyways, Fletch is coming into the party, and there's Elfin Starfish's ruined car there. Fletch, go ahead and include your audio. What happened there? It was a massive shot. We saw the nose of that car pulling 60 degrees in the air from the incident. Do you think you'll be able to come back from that in the race itself? Alright, well, it's an absolute travesty to see that happen to you, Fletch. After that massive lap you set in Q1, we'll look forward to you trying to make your way up to the field in the race. Meanwhile, we're also going to try and reach out to Elfin Starfish, who has also had a significant incident. And right now, it's the way it's looking. If qualifying is going to be anything to go off of, we may see an extremely chaotic race with very few finishers at the end. Right now, we're going to reach out to Elfin Starfish to see if he wants to say anything about what happened. Higsby right now is in the middle of a flyer lap. And here we are coming into the party right now is Elfin Starfish. Starfish, you went ahead. You set a lap time of 156.087, not very fast, and then you crashed out. What happened in Q2?
So I messed up the first lap. I half spun a bit, but caught it. So I was letting Williams through. He was on a hot lap, but he decided to do 2 hot laps, which is I did not expect in Spa. So I had to complete my lap and just got the dirty air going through the last bit of the second sector and just slightly touched the wall, but just spinned it. That's about it.
Alright, do you think you'll be able to come back from that in the race itself?
I think my pace was very strong qualifying. I was quicker than the Mercedes, which is pretty good. Quicker than some of the other midfield cars, so I think I could get some decent points.
Alright, and now I just want to ask you one more question. You are the 4th driver to crash out in qualifying alone, and we're not even, when it happened, we weren't even halfway through Q2. Do you think we may see a lot of accidents in the race itself?
I think in the race it might settle down a bit, but I think that first lap has started nearly every man for himself going into the first few corners.
Alright, well, thanks very much, Elfin Starfish, for sharing what's occurred with you right now, and hopefully you will be able to rebound from that instant in the race itself. Anyways, as we now begin to turn our focus back onto the racetrack, Higsby has just invalidated the lap he was in the middle of, and we only have 5 drivers who have legal laps right now. Torpedo is going to try and set a lap as well. He was the one who ended Q1 with the fastest lap overall, but Fletch had the fastest for a large portion of it. That's why I did say that earlier. So that was a little bit of a hiccup on my part, but so be it. So Torpedo, the only Red Bull to make it into Q2, is a very, very chaotic qualifying session right now. Running down through Sector 2 right now. Dave Ewart is on an out lap right now, and Zola is in the middle of a flyer lap as well. And there's no one around Zola at the moment, so he should be able to complete that without too much issue. Torpedo right now at the bottom section of the circuit, the lowest point on the track. There's a very, very slight incline once you get into Sector 3. It's not super noticeable until you get to the chicanes at the end of that third sector. And then the run down to Turn 1 is also with a very, very slight uphill incline. Then you round the first corner hairpin, and they have a long run right downhill. Then you get right into Al Rouge and Redillion and shoot right up to the highest point of the track. It's basically like the inverse of North America's Laguna Seca's corkscrew corner, as Torpedo sets a lap time of 144.415. So making sure that your car can properly adapt to the changes in elevation is extremely, extremely important to gain a decent lap here. Dave Ewart's in the middle of a lap right now, but Zola is the driver we're going to be focusing on because he will be the next driver to cross the line, assuming nothing goes wrong here. He puts the power down, pops open the DRS, and he will set a lap time good enough for 6, 145.387. Everyone who has set a lap time thus far, even including Elfin Starfish, has set their lap time on the medium tire compounds. Dave Ewart is on the mediums as well as he is trying to make something happen. Mazda has set a time of 144.454, low 144.956. So we're seeing a lot of different times going onto the board. Hurricane set a time of 144.014. Right now with two drivers out of the session. Oh, and Dave has invalidated the lap he was in the middle of. That's not going to bode well for him. Higsby will cross the line, 145, but it's another invalid lap, and he's not going to have enough fuel to just do this forever. That's the big issue. That is the Williams of Frisbee that he just crossed in front of. Frisbee is trying to set a faster lap on these soft tire compounds. He seems to think that there is a risk that he will get bumped out of this session if he's stuck with the time he currently had. Schumacher also has equipped softs in pit lane, as has Hazel, who's currently in the middle of an outlap right now. But Higsby, 30.3 at the end of Sector 1. He needs to keep a lap clean because the time is almost up in the session, and I'm being very honest, we could see drivers not making it in the next session just by not being able to set a proper time. Level 6 Beastien is in the middle of an outlap right now as he is on that long back straightaway. Higsby is the main driver I'm putting my focus on. Hazel is also on an outlap. He is going to be turning these soft tire compounds. And because of how long this track is, a lot of these guys who set times early on with mediums, they're going to be kind of locked into it. They won't have a chance to jump on the softs late in the session. Higsby coming around, exits Sector 3, 116.036. Torpedo retires from the session in the pits. He feels no need to continue pushing. Danny also retires from the session. He currently has the fastest time in this session with 144.176. Now Higsby navigates this final corner. It looks like he'll finally get a clean lap. And at the line, not very much fuel left in the tank. It doesn't matter. 144.887. So that was better than either of his prior aborted laps as well. So there's definitely speed in that machine. And the driver definitely has some level of control over it. This is Dave Ewart as he is now making the run through the last two corners. Ryan Hurricane retires from the session. Dave Ewart will set a lap time 144.963. So right now, Schumacher is on the bubble, but he's in the middle of an outlap and he should get one serious chance at this. Hazel and Beastien both have yet to set lap times. Beastien has just begun his flyer lap, and Hazel is in the middle of a flyer lap as well. Beastien, because of where he is on track, will likely only get this single lap and will not get a chance at another run at it. So all the pressure is on the Mercedes right now. Mazda retires from the session in the pits. He feels no need to continue pushing. Hazel has invalidated the lap he was in the middle of, and he has 1 minute to get to the line and try and set a proper fast lap. Lowe retires from the session as well. Beastien cannot afford to invalidate a lap right now. And Hazel needs to get to the line before the session is over. Schumacher has gotten to the line, so he will have one more attempt at a flyer lap here. And that is Beastien's teammate, Dave Ewart, who pulls well off circuit there to try and give his teammate more room as Dave is on a cooldown lap. Right now, Schumacher's time of 145.789 leaves him on the bubble, and both this man here, Beastien, and Hazel are the drivers that might take him out of Q3. Mercedes trying to get representation in Q3 again. They did it last week, but the race itself fell apart for them. Bestian trying to do what his teammate was unable to last week. We've seen Bestian spend a lot of time in these races going multiple laps down from either underwhelming pace or being caught in others' instance. Being starting up near the front is a great way to avoid at least getting caught in other people's instance. Bestian into the top 10 with a 144.928. Dave Ewart is coming to the pits. Right now, Ryan Hurricane is on the bubble. Schumacher has invalidated the lap he was in the middle of. And now the question is, can Hazel knock Ryan Hurricane out of the top 10? This is going to be Hazel's only chance. Going through Sector 3. It's still clean, but the fuel light is flashing on that Alpha. His teammate, Boothie, was one of the first drivers to crash out in Q1. Hazel trying to carry the weight of the team on his shoulders right now. There are just 2 serious corners left. 3 if you want to count this high-speed full throttle bend. But there's 2 serious corners left. Schumacher retires from the session. He knows that he can't get out on track again. Hazel pops up in the DRS and at the line. Is it enough? It's not enough! And it was only by 0.05 of a second. He will not make it. He set a time, but it was not enough to get him into the session. Hazel will have to settle with 11th. And in the end, when it comes to the best, the only car who set a fast lap time in the top 10 on the softs was Frisbee in the Williams, and he went right to the top. He was the only one to break the 144 barrier. What a very, very interesting scenario, to say the least. .995. That's the best time we saw out of the Williams of Frisbee, and he's going to be in a different starting strategy compared to everyone else around him. Everyone else is going to be starting on mediums. He will be starting on these soft tire compounds. And those softs didn't have a whole lot of wear on them, only realistically 2 laps. So there's your final lineup of everyone who does and does not make it into the next session. I'll say this, one thing for certain, the gap in times right now between Danny and Ryan Hurricane, they've closed down a bit. It's only 1 second gap between the fastest and slowest, but Ryan cannot afford to be behind Danny. He is still behind Danny in the points. He can't afford to be behind him in the race as well. So he's really going to have to try hard to make something happen here in Q3. Again, we are anticipating it should be dry throughout the entire race and qualifying session as well. The question is going to be who's going to be the first one out on the track. Dave Ewart and Level 6 BCM, both of the Mercedes get representation in qualifying session 3. Ozda, who's only done, I think this is his only serious race in XRL. I might be misremembering, but I think this is his first serious race. He's got his first representation in the session. Frisbee brings a Williams up into there. Zola brings the Renault up in there. Higsby, despite having multiple invalid laps, he's up in here. Then you have your points leaders and contenders in the Drivers' and Manufacturers' Championship, the McLarens, and then Ryan Hurricane. Then you have Torpedo, who the Red Bulls have been very, very... They've been struggling most of the season. A lot of it hasn't been from anything from their doing. It's definitely been things on track that have hurt them more than anything else. But Torpedo finally has brought some good representation from them there. So we're seeing a very, very interesting spread of drivers who are having a good run in qualifying here. This is Ozza. He is the first one out on track, and he wants to set the barrier, set the time for everyone else to chase after in the session. And just behind him on track is Frisbee 2, who set the fastest time in Q2. Then just behind him, that is Higsby in the Tracing Point. And then behind him, it is the points leader, Danny JJ-A02, and behind him is his teammate XRL Low. And then way farther back, going up to the Al Rouge Resilient Complex right now, that is Ryan Hurricane in the Ferrari. So 6 drivers out on track and 4 are still in the pits at the moment. Ozda will try and be the first driver to set a lap time in the session and will set the bar for the entire session. Again, 12 minutes for Q3, and those 12 minutes will go away fast, especially when you consider that you use a little bit more than 2 minutes just making sure everything's properly checked in the pits and then doing a warm-up lap here. Final corners right now as the AlphaTauri straightens up, pops up in the DRS, and begins his flying lap. Frisbee, a really, really wide line through that last corner, trying to utilize as much track as possible to maximize his speed. And you can now see on the pit lane, Zola is beginning his run coming out onto the circuit. That's not going to be great for Higsby, because Higsby is going to come out on circuit just about even with Zola. Actually, no, Zola was behind him. But for Danny, he's going to have to navigate around this car and do it fast, because right now there's not really anywhere for him to go. Zola is going to hold up Danny significantly. Zola gets held up, holds himself up, and holds up Danny as well. So Danny and Zola both have a very, very bad run. Just bad timing by Zola coming out onto the circuit, and Danny will have a very, very slow lap that will have to overcome in the session. This is Torpedo. He is now beginning his outlap. BC and Davey Ward in the Mercedes are the only 2 drivers not on track yet, and that is now changing because Davey Ward has just come onto the circuit proper. But the focus still is on Ozda, because right now he is positioning himself to be the first driver to set a time in the session. Into that final chicane now. Pops up in the DRS, and at the line, the time for everyone to challenge is going to be a 1:43.962. I'm sure we'll see drivers go faster than that, but we now have an idea as to what times people need to start going for. Frisbee will cross the line shortly afterwards. He will set a time 1:44.409, and now Higsby will cross with a 1:44.382. Danny is going to come into the pits. He only had enough fuel, I guess, for one serious attempt, and that holdup from Zola is really going to hurt Danny's attempt at making a run for the pole. This is his teammate XRL Low, though. Low is going to try and make something happen going through these final 2 corners, and he also is going to bring it into the pits as well. So both McLarens abort the laps they were in the middle of. This is Ryan Hurricane. He will try and be the 4th driver to set a time in this session. Fuel is extremely low in that thing right now. He's going to have to lay hard on the ERS on this straightaway. He sets a time of 1:44.407. So for right now, Oz's time is king. Zola in the middle of a lap, but it immediately gets invalid in the first corner. Torpedo is in the middle of a lap as well as he goes up through the Al Rouge Rodillion Complex. This man set the fastest time at the very end of Q1. And something has happened to Ozda. Ozda has gone off into the gravel traps there in Sector 2. I don't see any damage on that car, but that's not going to speak very well. If the car is that on it, and he spins out in the process, trying to put the power down and get going, and he immediately goes around. A little bit of trouble trying to get everything going, as we see the 2 McLarens are now beginning their run back onto the circuit to get another shot. The first one of them out onto the circuit is Danny, as he is already up through the Al Rouge Resilient Complex and on that nice long back straightaway. Dave Ewart in the Mercedes is in the middle of a lap, as is Torpedo. Torpedo exiting Sector 2 right now. At the end of Sector 2, it's a time of 1:15.807. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oz has had another incident just trying to get into the pits. But anyways, we focus back on Torpedo. Out of that high-speed, full-throttle bend, and now into these last two corners. Pops up in the DRS on the straight, and at the line, he will set a very respectable time, 1:44.373. Ryan Hurricane's in the middle of a cool-down lap right now. The real interest is Dave Ewart, who invalidated the lap. Oh, and it was at a good time. Hopefully he has enough fuel to go for another go, because he's trying for it right now. Danny is in the middle of an outlap, as is his teammate XRL Low. Danny has been respectably fast throughout both qualifying sessions. Lays hard onto the ERS on this start-finish straight. Will back off it just a bit as he comes around the first corner, and now the run downhill begins. Less than 5 minutes left in the session, and we only have 5 drivers who have set laps in the session. Zola and Beastian are both in pit lane, and they're going to need to get onto the circuit quickly if they want to set a time in this session. This is your current championship points leader trying to make something happen. Out of that final serious corner of braking in Sector 2, he's now in Sector 3. This is all speed focus. Zola and Beastian are now out on track beginning out laps. But Danny and his teammate Lowe will try to be the next drivers to set times. Coming out of that final corner, the DRS pops open, he lays into the ERS, and at the line, it's going to be a very, very serious time, 1:43.608. And here comes his teammate Lowe, and he's going to try and make it a McLaren lockout on the front row. Hey, all right. Ooh, wow, a little bit of a twitch putting the power down to the straight. But he does. They knock Ozda off the front row. Now, Ozda's back out on track. He's on the outlap going to try and go even faster. And Ozda definitely has the ability to beat Lowe, because the gap between Lowe and Ozda in times right now is only .6 of a second? Yeah, it's .006, 6,000ths of a second, basically. But now the focus is on Zola and Beastian. Beastian is in the middle of an outlap that is, quote, invalidated. And Zola needs to make sure that his first flyer lap is legal as well, because when they come to the line, they're only going to have about 2 minutes left to do this. Beastian, a wide entry onto the start-finish line straight, trying to maximize the straight line speed. Rounds the hairpin corner, as now both of them are beginning laps. Ryan Hurricane is out in the middle of a flyer right now. Lean hard into the DRS and DRS. Higsby, Torpedo, and Ozda are all on outlaps. Everybody is out on circuit right now, trying to either set their first lap times or improve on what their first lap times were. Ryan Hurricane already up by 1100ths in the first sector. This is Frisbee in the Williams. Fastest driver in qualifying session 2, but still the second slowest right now. He's going to look to try and rebound. Danny has brought it into the pits. He's not going to go for another attempt. He seems very, very confident in the lap that he has set. Dave Ewart is invalidated the lap he was in the middle of as brought into the pit, so he is locked into 8th at best, if not lower, if Zola or Besian sets good lap. Besian is invalidated the lap he's in the middle of, and for Besian, this is not good because there's only 50 seconds before he can get to the line. He needs to get to the line as fast as possible if he wants another shot at setting a serious lap. Torpedo has set a time of 1:44.373. He's going to try and go faster. Now Higsby is in the middle of a lap that he's going to try and go faster on. Ryan Hurricane will cross the line. He jumps up to 4th with a 1:43.964, but he's still behind the McLaren rivals. Zola comes out of that final corner, and he will finally set a lap time. It's only a 1:44.749, though. He needs to see if he can go faster. And now the question is, what about Besian? Besian aborts any attempt at setting a lap time. Frisbee sets the time of 1:43.775. And with that, time's up. Over. Plow. Ozda beats Frisbee. He goes up to second with a 1:43.682. And Frisbee is in the middle of one more possible lap, but the fuel light is flashing. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it or not. Ryan Hurricane is down on time this lap, and I'm not sure if he's actually going to try and push to go faster or not. There is a risk of crashing, and you would not want to start 10th when you already have a 5th place position locked up for starting. Torpedo trying to make something happen right now. He has exited Sector 2. He is up by over half a second right now. That improvement alone would be enough to launch him over Ryan Hurricane and maybe over Lowe. Higsby also trying to make something happen, but Torpedo will be the next driver to cross the line, and that's why we're focusing primarily on him right now. Final corners. Straightens the Red Bull out, opens up the DRS, lays into the DRS, and at the line, does he improve? He improves, but not nearly enough. He lost a bunch of time there in Sector 3. What about Higsby? Will he improve? He improves, but again, it doesn't move him up the order at all. Zola in the middle of an invalid lap. It doesn't matter for him, and Frisbee is on a cooldown lap. So for all intents and purposes, the session has ended, and for Danny JJ802, this is great because once again, he is going to have a top row starting position. He will be on the pole, but he's going to be sharing it with Ozda, who has been very, very aggressive on race starts in both Dev and X3. So this could end up being a very interesting run to the start of this race. But the session is over for all intents and purposes. Zola has brought the car down onto pit lane. Frisbee is in the middle of a very, very slow cooldown lap as there is basically no fuel left in that car, and everyone else is basically controlled by the AI right now. I'm not really sure what Frisbee was trying to do there, just cutting the circuit like that when there's no fuel, but okay. But anyways, the session has concluded. And a very, very chaotic qualifying session 1 and session 2 leads to a very interesting cast of characters in qualifying session 3. And this is your final lineup. Mercedes 9th and 10th with Level 6 Besian and Dave Ewart, Zola 8th in the Renault, Higsby 7th in the Racing Point, Torpedo 6th in the Red Bull, Lowe 5th in the McLaren, Ryan Hurricane 4th in the Ferrari, Frisbee 3rd in the Williams, Ozda 2nd in the AlphaTauri, and Danny 1st in the other McLaren. I just want to go ahead and say real quickly, McLaren and Mercedes were the only two teams that were able to get all of their drivers into this final qualifying session. So now we begin to get ready for the race itself. It's normally about 5 minutes worth of cooldown before we get into the race itself. We're going to be looking at what will be roughly a 6-minute wait, maybe 5 minutes if they get really fast, but it should be roughly a 6-minute wait until we get underway proper. We do not do pace laps in this series. There have been too many incidents in last season with issues regarding pace laps. So it should be right away, start on track. And the track has gotten a lot darker, so a little bit cooler circuit's going to be a little bit harder to get the tires properly up to temperature. With that said, though, again, the forecast was that there was going to be no rain in this race, so we're not anticipating rain to show up in the event. So, just standing by right now until we get underway with the race itself. You can see that Danny is apparently celebrating with that McLaren, trying to do a little bit of a shaking, a little bit of twerking, a little bit of dancing there on the front row of the grid. McLaren's starting first and fifth, but with a Williams in between them. Just standing by right now until we get into the race itself. But we should be underway relatively shortly here. Probably in about a minute and a half. That's the word we're getting from the officials. Just standing by right now until we can get properly underway here. Should be going in about 75 seconds, if not a little bit less. Stand by until we get underway. We should be going very shortly here, and everyone is now beginning to ready up properly on the circuit. So, we're going to try and keep as much of the action in focus as we can on the run down to the hairpin, but then as they go down to the Al Rouge Dealing Complex, we're going to jump on board with someone farther back in the grid so you can see the chaos as you try and fit 17 Formula One cars up through one of the blindest and most difficult corners in the entirety of motorsports. 4 lights, 5 lights, and it's lights out and away we go here. And right off the bat, Danny just has nothing he can do but go right to the front. Ozda is actually going to plummet through the order right away. No one can really do anything. They're nearly 3 wide farther back as one of the Mercedes, that's Beastian, goes way off circuit back there. And look at Schumacher and Kenzie Retro now having a little bit of a scrap at it going down the circuit. This is in the back of the field, and then there's a massive spread already from front to back. No one really able to get a really good run, but everyone made it through the first few corners cleanly by the looks of it. Schumacher on the inside of Kenzie Retro trying to make something happen as farther up Mr. Anderson and Level 6 Beastian are in a little bit of a scuffle of their own right now, and this is even farther up the order. Look at this battle as we see a Red Bull go off into the dirt. That is Torpedo. Then one Red Bull and the other Red Bull, Kenzie Retro, is having trouble as well. So both Red Bulls have issues going into Sector 2. Boothie has more speed than any of the drivers ahead, but he can't really make anything of it right now. Here we are, Boothie finally gets by Level 6 Beastian as Mr. Anderson and Elfin Starfish exchange positions. Now Elfin Starfish is ahead of Mr. Anderson just for a bit, and he puts his focus on Dave Ewart. This is a battle for points-paying positions here. It looks like that Mercedes is having a little bit of trouble staying properly on the line. Runs very wide. They're now neck and neck for the 9th and 10th spots. And to the front is going to be Elfin Starfish as just a little bit farther up. This is a battle between Hazel and Higsby. Higsby dives it really late under braking, and he's actually able to keep it legal and on the track. They're still side by side. Higsby spits the rear of that car sideways. That means that Hazel will take the 7th position. Zola is looking at Ryan Hurricane, but even more significantly than that, this is Frisbee who is second, and he is putting the pressure on Danny JJ802. This is the only car ahead of him on track. He is on sauce. If he can get by the McLaren, he will have clean air and can really maximize the ability of those soft tire compounds. Right underneath the rear wing of that McLaren. Ozda is the first driver to get a time penalty in the session. Oh, and Danny locks up the tires, and now Frisbee shoots it up the inside. But Danny has the advantage of a better line. Oh, a little bit of contact that time. Frisbee very much faster and in a rush to try and get by the McLaren. But Danny is doing everything he can to keep that thing ahead. Oh, and Schumacher has had a spin. And I think there may be damage on the front wing of that car there, as he's going to fall to the back of the field. But Danny has now opened up a bit of a gap on Frisbee as Ozda now begins putting pressure on the Williams. Oh, and low with a humongous accident on circuit there. Oh, and look at that, and there's Torpedo who's involved in the accident as well. And Jesus Christ! Everyone just struggling just to avoid it, and it's so hard to do because he's right in the middle of the racing line. And that is a full course yellow safety car as Lowe with a humongous accident. That is not what you ever want to see here. We're going to try and reach out to Lowe to see what happened from his perspective, because all I saw on my end was that car just suddenly snapped. See a bunch of drivers, Frisbee, Mr. Anderson, Dave Ewart, Torpedo, Retro, all of them jumping into the pits right now. Frisbee is putting on hard tire compounds. Torpedo is putting on hard. Everyone in the back of the grid is throwing on the hard tire compounds, and they're going to try and make those hards last as long as they can in the race. It could be a very, very bold strategy. I'll be very curious to see if that will pay out. Gotta try one more time to reach out to Lowe. Started 5th on the grid, worked his way up into 4th, and then a complete accident, and now Danny is the only McLaren left on the grid. And for the Constructors' Championship, that is not going to help them one bit. The good news, though, is depending on how long it takes Kinsey, we might be able to get green this very lap. Because of how much straightaway there is here, and the fact that the leaders are at much, much reduced pace, we know that we're going to see everyone 12th to 15th catch up before the end. In fact, Schumacher is already caught in the back of the field, and Dave Ebart and Mr. Anderson will catch very shortly. Torpedo should be able to catch in about a few more laps. Oh, and okay, Mr. Anderson has apparently had an accident trying to catch up with the grid. That's no bueno. But he has caught up to the back of the grid now. And now the question is, how long will it take Kinsey to catch up to the back, and will he be able to do it before we get too far? Again, he is flying while the rest of the field is just pacing. I don't know if we're going to be going green this lap or not. But Mr. Anderson, not looking good for him. He has front wing damage on that car that he received while trying to catch up to the back of the field here. No word from race control if safety car will be coming in this lap, so I'm assuming that we're going to get one more lap under this full course safety car. We'll anticipate to see Mr. Anderson come into the pits here, and Dave Ewart is coming into the pits as well, so I wonder if there may have been some damage on Dave's car. Kinsey is now caught in the back of the field. Yes, there did seem to be damage to the front wing of Dave Ewart's machine, so he will now go down to 16th. And he is going to equip the medium tire compounds now. So he had the hards on, and now he's going to put the mediums on. It's a very strange decision, and Mr. Anderson also puts on the medium tire compounds as well. So now Kinsey will graduate back up into the 14th position. But at the front is the same two drivers at the front of the field that were early on. It's Danny JJ02 and XRL Ozda. But now Ryan Hurricane has found himself up in the 3rd as Frisbee, who is the other guy up front, has decided to get off strategy. He's thrown on hard tire compounds and will try and drag those as long as he can through this race. He was, just to put things in perspective, Frisbee was right underneath Danny for a good portion of the lap right before we had the XRL Lowe's crash that put us under this full course safety car. But already, Mr. Anderson and Dave Ewart have caught the back of the field, and we should see them go green this lap. And it looks like, I'm not going to say for sure, but it looks like the sun is beginning to peek its way through the clouds just a little bit in Sector 2, and that could help warm the circuit up a little bit and make it a little bit easier for drivers to keep good temperature in their tires. The interesting thing to watch here will be Frisbee, Schumacher, and Torpedo trying to hold off the likes of Kinsey Retro, Mr. Anderson, and Dave Ewart. There's the word safety car coming in this lap. But the back 3 cars on grid right now, they are going to be on the medium tires, which are going to be faster than the 3 guys on hard tires ahead of them. There we are. Danny opens up a massive gap on Ozda immediately. In fact, there's actually a little bit of a risk that Danny might catch the pace car before they get to the line. Yeah, he has to jump onto the brakes to make sure he doesn't run into the pace car, and that spits the rear of that McLaren out sideways. Ozda catches right back up to him as we come to the green flag. field very much spread out all throughout right now. Does not a very even start for the entire grid, to say the least. But look at this. Ozda is right there underneath your points leader. He is right there. He wants to make something happen. He is going to have the maximum amount of draft that you can get. He looks to the inside. They're going to be neck and neck as they come to the end of the straight. And for the lead position, Danny is going to hold on, but he makes a little bit of a mistake. And they just come inches away from making contact. And here is Ozda. He looks to the inside once again, thinks better of it, tucks back in line behind the McLaren. And the McLaren again locks up the tires. He is struggling from the pressure right now. And this is great for Ryan Hurricane as these two continue to battle it out. It means that he has a chance to capitalize as their tires burn off between Ozda wearing off the fronts from running behind Danny and Danny locking up the tires time and time again, struggling to deal with the pressure. Ozda's backed off from Danny just a little bit, getting the tires a little bit cooler. But Danny's attempts to try and juke the field at the start end up paying him back in a very bad way, and now he has to worry about the drivers behind. Level 6 BC has a time penalty for track violation warning. But here's a battle between Torpedo and Schumacher for the 12th and 13th place. These two drivers are both on the hard tire compounds. Torpedo and Schumacher trying to make something happen right now. The Red Bull seems to be a little bit faster in some portions of the racetrack. Jesus Christ, the Haas gets a little bit sideways ahead of the Red Bull, but it's not going to be an issue. He's going to hold on to that position for now. Frisbee has already overtaken Fletch on the racetrack, and now he is working on his way to go up through the field right now. He is in the 10th position as Torpedo has gotten by Schumacher and is now putting his focus. Oh, here we are for the lead. Once again, Ozda on the inside of Danny, but then thinks better of it, pulls out back in line behind your race leader. Ooh, wow, look at that AlphaTauri get really sideways as they begin running downhill. That's actually going to open up the gap between himself and Danny just a little bit. That's not going to be very good for them. A little bit farther back, this is Higsby as he is beginning to close in on Hazel. Now, Hazel has soft tire compounds, and they will last you a reasonable amount of time on this circuit, but Higsby just has a few better runs here and there, and it's letting him close in. Ozda already closing back up underneath the rear wing of Danny. Oh, and Danny makes a mistake, and here comes Ozda to the outside. He's going to hold in. They're going to be neck and neck. He backs out just a little bit longer. But Ozda makes a mistake every now and again, and Danny is making massive mistakes. Oh, and Torpedo has had more wing damage. And now Torpedo falls dead last with the wing damage he is dealing with, but the battle for a lead continues. Ozda is still right there behind Danny. And one thing for sure, once DRS is enabled, we are definitely going to see Ozda shoot into the lead with almost no issue. Then the question is going to be, how well can he hold the lead? There we are, DRS has been enabled. Uthi coming back into the pits to repair damage. Ozda, another time penalty, and that might be what hurts Ozda's 2 time penalties he's gotten so far. But you can see how much faster he is than Danny in a straight line. With a combination of DRS and ERS, they're going to be neck and neck and going into the corner. A little bit of contact, but Ozda is going to take the top spot. And now for Ryan Hurricane, this is perfect because that is his rival in the championship right in front of him. He can put full focus and full pressure on him. Ryan Hurricane wants to see Ozda start running away right now so that way he can get and use DRS on Danny and overtake his points rival. Oh, and Zola has just had an incident. Oh, and that car is destroyed, and that is a full course safety car. Another full course safety car on circuit. And Zola is completely out of the event now. And he's not the only one. I think yes, Boothie has just had an incident as well. So Boothie and Zola have both had two massive accidents at completely different ends on the racetrack at the same time. We're going to try and get both of them in here and see what happened to both of them. We have no way of seeing what happened to Boothie. He came in to repair damage, and he had an accident at the top of the hill, the same place he had an accident in qualifying. Hazel coming into the pits. He's going to take this chance to get off the soft tire compounds, and he's going to be joined by Elfin Starfish and Frisbee. Frisbee was on hards, and I have to wonder why Frisbee is coming into the pits again. But he has chosen to jump back into the pits, and here we are coming into the broadcast booth with us is Boothie. Boothie, another accident in the same place of the racetrack. What happened this time? It's an absolute travesty to see this happen again. So now the question is, your teammate Hazel is still out on track. Do you think he's going to be able to bring home any good points for the team today? All right. Alright, well, once again, thanks for sharing your input, and it's a shame to see two very valuable Alpha Romeos torn up here. Alright, well, that's the word anyway from Boothie. We're going to try and reach out to Zola one more time to see what happened to him, as we had two massive accidents on two opposite ends of the track occurring at pretty much the exact same time. And that puts us under our second full course safety car of the day. One more time, we reach out to Zola to see if he can do anything to talk with us about what happened. But now the race leader is Ozda and not Danny, and Ozda needs to try and outrun the time penalties he has accrued and do it as fast as possible. And for Ryan Hurricane, he needs to immediately start pressuring Danny. Danny needs to just stay right underneath the rear wing of that AlphaTauri. If he can do that, he can utilize the DRS and maybe get back into the lead. We didn't see Danny behind Ozda long enough to see if Danny can overtake him. So Danny just needs to do the same thing to Ozda that Ozda was doing to him. Schumacher is still a long way off from the back of the field, so we will go another lap in the green, but two full course safety cars, and we're not even a quarter of the way through the race. And we've had 3 DNFs already in the session. Higsby, just want to give him a little bit of a shout out. In real life, the Racing Point team has always been a little bit on the good side at Spa, and it looks like he is living up to that reputation here, although in the virtual world, he is living up to that reputation here, as he is currently in the 4th position, so good job on him. Also, I just want to point out one other thing. Everyone is now back on medium tires, with the exception of Elfin Starfish and Fletch 2020 1390. Now those two are the only two drivers running the hard tire compound right now. And then behind, this is the interesting thing, the two Mercedes of Level 6 BCN and Dave Ewart, they have now found themselves up in the 5th and 6th position. And Dave Ewart, he's found himself in 6th despite having to come in to repair damage and get on a different set of tires. So, very interesting scenario by the Mercedes. Both of them seem to be having a very, very good start to the race, to say the least. cut out the wonderful, I guess. There we are. Okay. Yeah, my controller slipped and I hit a button while trying to catch it through my knees. And then here's the other thing. Mr. Anderson is currently 7th. So even if Ryan Hurricane can't overtake Danny in the points for driver's title, right now, if Mr. Anderson can hold on where he is now, they would bring home more points for the Ferrari team in the manufacturer's fight. And there's the word, safety car will be coming in this lap. This is a little bit farther back. This is Kinsey Retro in the Red Bull up into the 8th position. Basically an inverse of fortunes from what it was in qualifying, where Torpedo was the one who made it into Q1. And Kinsey wasn't even in the top 15. Now, the inverse, Torpedo is only 13th, while Kinsey is in the top 10. Hazel is now trying to bring the entire weight to that team on him. And then Elf and Starfish in the Haas is trying to make something happen. But now our focus is going to be on the leaders as we come to the green flag. Ozda not doing the same thing that Danny did. He's not shooting out as soon as he can. He's holding back just a little bit longer. What will Danny be able to do to fight back against Ozda? Coming to the green flag, a much more orderly run to the green this time. And Danny got a great run against Ryan Hurricane. A little bit farther back, Mr. Anderson, Dave Ewart, level 6 BC, and all on top of each other. 2 Mercedes already going at neck and neck right through the first corner alone. But level 6 BC will hold on to that spot for the moment as Dave Ewart has to fall in line behind. And now here comes Mr. Anderson, a humongous run up to the inside, and that's Dave Ewart, and he's going to go into the inside wall. And somehow, I don't know how, but somehow that Mercedes is still alive. But a little bit of contact between himself and Mr. Anderson sees him go swinging wide off the track into the outside wall. There's a little bit of wing damage, and I'm shocked the toe's not knocked out of that car. Here's a battle here between Frisbee and Elf and Starfish, neck and neck, trying to make something happen. Still side by side, but now Frisbee will cut in line ahead of Starfish. That's Torpedo behind him looking to make something happen as well. You know, you should not do a drinking game when it comes to me broadcasting regarding me, say, making something happen. Wow! Mr. Anderson overtaking 2 Mercedes in half of a lap. And level 6 Beastian just could not even remotely stand up against the might of that Ferrari on that straightaway. And now he has to deal with another Ferrari-powered car. That is Hazel behind him. And Starfish, the 2 of them are now neck and neck. High-speed bend. Torpedo backs out of it just a bit, so Starfish will hold on to the 10th spot for just a little bit longer. But here's something else to take note of. Ozda is running away from Danny, and Ryan Hurricane is still within Danny. DRS range, so DRS, which should be enabled on the next lap, might come in favor of Ryan Hurricane here. This could get interesting. Torpedo is right there underneath Starfish, and then farther up, Frisbee is right there behind Kinsey Retro, is behind Hazel, who is behind level 6 Beastian. So that's a little bit of a train there that could form. Danny closes in a little bit on Ozda on the straight that time. And Ryan Hurricane actually seems to lose a bit of time, but now the situation is reversed. It seems like the Ferrari, who is in 3rd, and the AlphaTauri, who is leading, might be just a little bit faster in the corners. Well, I say that, but Danny is closing in again on Ozda, not by a massive amount, but the top 3 are all closing. In fact, I'll just go ahead and say maybe even the top 4, because Higsby hasn't really lost them either. Here's another battle, Torpedo over Elf and Starfish and Flesh. Now Starfish and Flesh are both on hard tire compounds, and Frisbee and Hazel has guessed something has happened there. I think Hazel may have gotten into the wall. Oh, and Kinsey has dropped. He's plummeted. There's significant front wing damage on his machine, as now he falls all the way down to the 13th position, and he's going to have to pit for that to repair that. Ryan Hurricane trying to get within a second of Danny, and Danny trying to muster up another attempt against Ozda here. DRS has been enabled, So we will see DRS coming online very shortly here. And now the circumstances have changed. Danny has now gotten away from Ryan Hurricane, so Danny will be able to put the full weight of that McLaren to bear against the AlphaTauri of Azda on the back straightaway. He's fallen off just a little bit through the Al Rouge-Rodillion complex, but he's making it up, and boy is he making it up quick down the straight. Not fast enough to make a move, but he definitely closed in with a vengeance. And this here is Hazel and Frisbee. They both have DRS on each other. Well, Frisbee doesn't have a DRS on Hazel, he has DRS on Beastian. But still, Hazel closed right in on Frisbee. So now the challenge is going to be for Ryan Hurricane to somehow close in on Danny by the time they get to the next DRS straight. Oh, and that is, someone has gone, well, that's Beastian. Beastian has spun around, and now he's gonna fall. Now, the good news for Beastian is that there doesn't seem to be any serious damage on that car, so he should be able to continue. But it's not looking good as the back of the field just continues to pick itself and pull itself apart, slowly but surely. Ryan Hurricane is not closed in on Danny, and Danny is still within a second of Azda. Azda really trying to play spoil sport for the championship here and this race. But the big thing is, right now, Azda has time penalties that neither Danny or Ryan do. So right now, even if they were to finish where they are right now, when you take time penalties into account, he would still end up behind them. Danny still, he's a little bit closer to Azda this time, so he's going to have even more ability to utilize the DRS and even ERS if he so chooses. Azda holding the inside line, being relatively defensive. Now he crosses over at the last second. Nothing from Danny on track yet, but he is there. He is now the one putting massive pressure on Azda. And both of them are walking away from Ryan Hurricane, as Higsby is also falling off the back of Ryan Hurricane as well. Level 6 Beastin has come into the pits. So maybe there was damage on that Mercedes that we weren't able to see when he had that incident. But now the Mercedes once again end up in the back of the grid. Basically the inverse of what we see in reality. A little bit farther back, this is between Hazel and Torpedo. Torpedo has worked his way up into the 8th position, really putting the work in on that Red Bull. There's a yellow flag in Sector 2, as I guess Kinsey and Dave Ewart may have had an incident where they gotta get things together, but they're already back underway. Wow, Fletch is also closing out on Alpha Starfish. Whoa! Hazel completely botched the braking zone. He didn't make an overtake that stuck. Obviously, he had to give the position back, but you can't say he's not trying. As meanwhile, from the top spots, Danny is a little bit farther off from Mazda than he was last time. Not as quick through the Al Rouge-Rodillion complex, but he still has DRS and ERS to bear that he will use against Azda down the straight. And Frisbee has just overtaken Mr. I wasn't even paying attention, but Frisbee has some legit pace on his own. He has just overtaken Mr. Anderson with some DRS, and now we can likely start seeing him walk away. He's going to now set his sights on Higsby in the 4th position. Excuse me, but Higsby is still 4 seconds up the road. And now, Mr. Anderson has to worry about XRL Torpedo, who is also charging up the grid right now. Here's the other thing interesting to note. The top 4 drivers are the only ones who are still on the same set of tires that they started this race off with. Everyone else has swapped tire compounds at least once so far. And yet the top 4 are still gapping the rest of the field with the possible exception of Higsby. So It's a very, very interesting scenario that showcases the real haves and have-nots when it comes to strategy going down the line. Because the top 4 will likely have to make fewer pit stops than the drivers farther back. And yeah, the track is now fully coated in sun once more. Oh, and that's Hazel. And Hazel has gone off there at the start of Sector 3. No damage on that car, but he's going to fall all the way to 11th now. Torpedo and Mr. Anderson make a little bit of contact. I don't think either of them are going to be super happy with how that turned out. But here's something else to take note of. Higsby has just made his pit stop, and Danny is the closest he's been to Ozda this entire run. This could be Danny's chance. He's going to have DRS and ERS on the straightaway. He's within a third of a second, but he's actually falls off of Ozda. He's still falling. Now he's closing in. But it took him a long time to start closing in, and he's not able to actually do anything to the AlphaTauri. But again, Danny doesn't have to actually overtake Ozda. The main thing he needs to do is just keep making Ozda push. Because as long as Ozda keeps pushing and Danny stays right there with him, they will get away from Ryan Hurricane, and Danny will not have to worry about Ryan. He'll be able to extend his points lead. Not to mention, that's a weird glitch. Not to mention, Ozda has time penalties, Danny does not. So Danny will still inherit the race win unless he starts racking up time penalties. Frisbee now into the 4th position as Higsby has made his stop. And Higsby, interestingly enough, elected to jump onto soft tire compounds. So he's going to be way faster than everyone ahead of him for some time. Mr. Anderson now behind XRL Torpedo. As Torpedo is on his own little charge up through the grid right now. Now here's interesting. Danny is actually fallen off. He's more than a second away from Ozda this time when they came to the start-finish line straight, but closed in within that second without the DRS on that straight. So now as they run downhill, Danny is still once again within the second of Ozda. He falls off. I don't know if he was close enough to have DRS coming onto the back straight. Yes, he still has DRS on the back straightaway, but he is dropping off of Ozda in pace right now and seems to be losing ground to the AlphaTauri. Higsby has now caught Schumacher. The first of the 2 Haas still on the racetrack. Both of the Haas are still on the racetrack. That infers that there are more Haas that are off. But he's got DRS. He looks to the inside. This should be a relatively simple overtake with soft tires and DRS. So now you can move Higsby up into the 9th position. And the next 2 drivers up the road from him are somewhat worn hard tires. So Higsby will be flying and running them down without too much of an issue, I'd imagine. Once he passes Starfish and Flesh, I think it'll be a little bit hard for him to start catching other drivers like Mr. Anderson or Torpedo farther up the grid. Frisbee's charge up through the order has stopped at about 6.75 seconds from the lead in 4th position, and Ryan Hurricane is just continuing to gradually fall off the top 2. He has pace, but he doesn't have the pace that Danny or Ozda has, and Danny has really closed in on Ozda throughout this lap. He is now within half a second coming onto the start-finish straight. Pops open the DRS. He might, if he tries, he might try and make a dive going into the hairpin. He thinks better of it, but he's right underneath the AlphaTauri. Now, if he can keep that McLaren properly stable going through the Al Rouge-Ardillion complex, he will have more speed than ever before against Ozda. He might be able to take the lead this time. The DRS is open on the McLaren, but he's not closing. He closes near the end, but the gap stays at about 0.3 all the way through. Most of the other battles on track have pretty much dissolved. Right now, it is between Danny and Ozda for a lead, and everyone else has about 1.2 seconds or more between each other. little interesting thing. Higsby is already starting to run down Elfin Starfish. You can see him very plainly right ahead on the screen. He's got a good line of speed, way faster through the corners, just with the advantage of the soft tires. He doesn't even need DRS to get by Elfin Starfish, so that's 2 Haas's that Higsby has now overtaken. He is 5 seconds out from Fletch, though. He'll probably be able to run down Fletch without too much of an issue, but beyond that, I think it's going to be very hard for him to actually make anything else happen. Meanwhile, focus back on the lead. Danny's fallen to a little bit more than half a second off of Ozda this time, and he does not seem to be as good through that chicane as Ozda is on that lap. Now going through the hairpin once more, he closes up just a little bit under braking. He's going to be very close to Ozda. Again, not as close as he was prior, but he's still going to be right there. As he pops open the DRS once more. Danny definitely closes on Ozda when the gap is larger, but if the gap is less than half a second gained onto that straightaway, there doesn't seem to be anything he's able to do, and I have to wonder if maybe Ozda is running a little bit slower, trying to make Danny burn up those tires chasing him, and making Danny burn through his ERS way faster than Ozda is, because Ozda only seems to be, I would guess at least, Ozda's only using the ERS on the straights when Danny is making a threat. I'm going to bring up the telemetry to see regarding that. Now, right now, Ozda has 56% ERS. Danny only has 32%. And when it comes to fuel, though, Ozda is running a little bit lighter on the fuel mixture right now. Oh, and that's a virtual safety car. And Kinsey has had an incident there in... Oh, and he's had an incident in the same place that Boothie has had his accidents now. We're going to try and reach out to Kinsey and see what happened to him. But we are under now a virtual safety car. Now the question is, will any of the leaders go ahead and pit under this virtual safety car? The top 2 will not. Ryan Hurricane does not. What about Frisbee or Torpedo? As Frisbee is now over, as Torpedo is actually closed in just a little bit on Frisbee. They will not, by the looks of it. What about Mr. Anderson? No move. Fletch does not have a chance. We are already back underway here. Gonna try one more time to reach out to Kinsey here. Well, he's in Do Not Disturb mode. That might be a reason why. Meanwhile, Torpedo is closing in on Frisbee. These two were the fastest in sessions 1 and 2. Torpedo fastest in session 1, Frisbee fastest in session 2. And Frisbee set that fastest time on the softs, though. So this is a very interesting scenario right now between the two of them. Also, something else interesting right now, Danny and Ryan Hurricane, your 2 top drivers in the points are the only 2 drivers who do not have time penalties yet. And real quickly, as we swap from a tire focus to a penalty focus, Ozda has 6 seconds, but has stayed at 6 seconds for most of this race, and no one is more than 9 seconds worth of penalty. As it stands right now, Ozda would fall to 3rd, assuming that neither Danny or Ryan take any time penalties before the end of the race. So Danny has built his ERS back up to about 55, 56%. Ozda is up there at 60%. So Danny is working the ERS gap back in his favor. And Ozda is also using a lot more fuel in a lap than Danny is. Now, I don't know if Ozda is running a little bit richer or if there's just a little bit less fuel in that thing to begin with. As Hasl's just overtaken Schumacher farther down the grid. Schumacher just gets back by Hasl, apparently. They're still side by side, and Schumacher's going to hold on to that spot for now. So yeah, both of them are laying into the ERS and DRS on the straight, but Danny's using significantly more. For right now, the two of them are relatively even when it comes to fuel consumption. Oh, another lockup from Danny, and that was a big lockup as well. He didn't lose too much time, but that's not going to bode well for those tires. And Hazel takes Schumacher again on the back straightaway. And a little bit farther up, Torpedo has just about caught Frisbee. And Danny is now struggling just to stay within a second of Ozda. There you are, you can see Danny laying hard in the ERS on this straightaway. Now he pulls out of it relatively early though. He didn't lay nearly as hard into it as he had before. Now he has a little bit more ERS than Ozda does this time, but he's also more than a second out on this straight. But he made a better run going through the chicane, so he ends up compensating for a loss of the DRS on the main straightaway. Now he's back within 9/10 as they come on the run down to Al Rouge Rodillion. And he is within, once again, Danny ends up just being within DRS range, but he's now 9/10 out, and although he's closing a bit on Ozda, he's not closing as fast as he was before. Now the thing is, Danny now has more ERS in the tank than Ozda does, and he's closing just a little bit. And now that's a lockup from Ozda that time. Meanwhile, a little bit farther back in the field, Mr. Anderson has just gradually fallen off in pace. Oh, and Schumacher has had an incident. And is right there at the top of the Al Rouge Rodillion complex, and we can't see him. So we are under a full course safety car now. Ooh, and that car is destroyed. We're going to try and talk to Schumacher and see what happened to him that took him out of the session. We are under a full course safety car now. And it's going to take a long time for the field to get properly bunched back up this time around. And I'll be very interested to see if any of our leaders decide. And there we are. Ozda is going to use this to come into the pits, as will Danny, as will Ryan Hurricane. What about Frisbee? Frisbee is coming into the pits as well, as is Torpedo. What about Mr. Anderson? He's going to come into the pits, as will Fletch, as will Higsby. Hazel is the next driver to question, as once again I'm going to try and reach out to Schumacher. So Hazel's coming into the pits. So Ozda, Danny, and Ryan Hurricane all put on hard tire compounds, while Frisbee has equipped softs. Elfin Starfish will also come into the pits. What about the two Mercedes of Dave Ewart and Level 6 Beastian? And Dave Ewart will stay out on the racetrack, as will Level 6 Beastian. So the Mercedes will overtake Elfin Starfish, and they will each gain one position from that. But other than that, not much of a change. Now, the interesting thing is that Torpedoes put on slightly more mediums. So the big advantage to putting on worn tires is that they've already gone through a heat cycle. It's not going to be as hard to get some temperature into the rubber. So you'll be back up to proper pace a lot faster. For the driver like Ozda, Danny, and Ryan Hurricane, they're going to be struggling to try and get some nice heat into those hards. Frisbee will also be struggling with that a bit, although not to the same extent because he's in softs. So Torpedo, even if it's only going to be for a short period of time, will be faster than the 4 drivers ahead of him, and he should be faster than Ozza, Danny, and Ryan Hurricane for a good period of time. So Torpedo going to try and make a serious run for this. The big thing, though, is that Ozza, Danny, and Ryan are all on a single-stop strategy right now. No one else in the grid can make it on just one more stop, except, and this is a big if, maybe Dave Ewart, or maybe Higsby, if Higsby can make those mediums last to the end. Same with Hazel, maybe. It's a big maybe right now. But the top 3 drivers are all on what seems to be a one-stop strategy at the moment. Dave Ewart already caught the back of the field, and we should see Beastie catching the back of the field very shortly as well. And then Elfin Starfish will be the last driver who needs to catch the rear of the grid. So we should be going green, not this lap sadly, but on the next lap. So when lap 23 turns over into lap 24, we should be seeing the field go green once more. And a field in 17 cars, we've already seen 5 of them drop out. And Dave Ewart now comes into the pits. I do wonder a bit why he didn't decide to do it earlier. But he has come into the pit lane, and they are going to take off his hard tire compounds and going to put on a set of slightly worn mediums. I believe those are the same mediums he started the race off with. Now, he'll fall to 12th, but he's not going to be too far away from the back of the grid, and he was the only one to pit in that session. So once more, I'm going to go ahead and look at the time penalties a little bit more across the board. Torpedo now has 9 seconds of time penalties. That's not going to help him, especially with all these bunching of the fields. He doesn't have, it's going to be a lot harder for him to outrun those time penalties. The good news for Torpedo, though, is that everyone behind him has at least 3 seconds worth, if not more as well. So that will work somewhat in Torpedo's favor. And again, Danny and Ryan Hurricane are the only 2 drivers without time penalties right now. And Azu, who has led a significant chunk of this race, has to try again to get away from Danny. He needs to get away from the McLaren, otherwise there's going to be no way for him to win this race unless he can make Danny get 6 seconds of time penalties before this race is over. Because even if Ryan Hurricane, and then you have Ryan Hurricane to worry about, if Ryan Hurricane gets by Danny and he starts threatening Ozda, then you still have the problem where Ozda has the time penalties where these 2 drivers do not. So Ozda needs the McLaren and the Ferrari to start fighting so he can open up a gap on them and try to outrun his time penalty. And now with over half the race over, it's going to be extremely hard. He wasn't even able to do it in the first half of the race. Danny was almost always within 1.1 to 0.3 seconds of Ozda. It's going to be even harder now, especially when they're all in the same tire strategy. Ozda needs to make this restart perfectly. And then for Danny, Danny's in a similar position because Danny needs to do the same thing he did before. He needs to put intense pressure on Ozda, get Ozda to run away from the rest of the field. And as long as Danny can hold on to Ozda, and there's the word, safety cars in this lap, as long as Danny can hold on to the DRS draft of Ozda and keep pushing Ozda away from the field, then this win is more and more likely going to go in Danny's favor and will help him massively on the points. Ryan Hurricane didn't have a bad start. Initial start was bad, but he gathered it back up shortly afterwards, but then he fell off. He can't afford to fall off because if he falls off again, there's no guarantee we're going to have another full course safety car bunch the field up. He needs to make a move on Danny as soon as possible, otherwise he's going to continue to lose points to the McLaren in the Drivers' Championship. And then Frisbee is in the very interesting position. He is on soft tire compounds, and then Torpedo behind him is on lightly used mediums. They're both going to be faster than the top 2. So this is going to get very interesting very fast as we ride on board with Frisbee coming to the line. Ooh, you can see Frisbee already right on the back of Ryan Hurricane as Elfin Starfish goes over Beastian, going through that very first hairpin turn right away. Oh, Ryan Hurricane had a great run against Danny. He might be able to make something happen. He's within 0.2 of a second right now, but he's kind of stalled out there and isn't closing anymore. And that means that for now, at least, Danny is going to have the advantage over Ryan Hurricane. Ryan needs to get a little bit closer, but he has Frisbee and that Williams working the rear end of that Ferrari off. And Frisbee goes by Ryan Hurricane. And Frisbee already within half a second of Danny, and Danny has fallen off to about a second away from Ozda, so Frisbee might be able to make a run on Danny. And Torpedo is also now trying to make a run on Mr. Anderson, not Mr. Anderson, on Ryan Hurricane. Mr. Anderson is there ready to pick up the pieces. Danny a little bit better going through the exit of Sector 2, but he still has Frisbee closing in fast. Frisbee is significantly better on those softs than anyone in the top 3 at the start of this race is on the hards. The thing is, Frisbee will have to pit, and Danny has just earned his first time penalty, and for Ryan Hurricane that is huge because now he is the only driver without a time penalty, and for Ozza that is also huge because now he only needs to be 3 seconds ahead of Danny and not 6. And Frisbee has pretty much caught Danny now, and Danny has fallen off of Ozza just a bit. He's right underneath the McLaren, Frisbee and that Williams is. And a little bit farther back, Torpedo is right there underneath the Ferrari. We anticipate DRS will be enabled on the following lap. Frisbee right there behind Danny. Danny is trying to close in on Ozza, but he's really struggling because every time he starts mastering a run, Frisbee is right there. Danny is hanging right around the DRS zone of Ozza. Now he's closed in just a little bit, but Frisbee is right there. Frisbee might try and overtake both our first and second place drivers in one shot. But the big thing is, again, Frisbee, there is no way he's going to be able to make those softs last to the end of the race. Unless we have a lot of yellow. I guess if we had a lot of yellow, it could happen, but I don't see it happening otherwise. Frisbee is way closer to Danny than Danny is to Ozda. But if Danny can stay within the 1 second range of Ozda, he'll be able to utilize DRS as a defense against the Williams. Ryan Hurricane almost immediately has fallen off the top 3 after getting passed by Frisbee. And he's still trying to hold off Torpedo as well. And there's the word, DRS has been enabled. So when they get onto the back straightaway, that's going to be where everything gets interesting. Danny just a little bit quicker through the hairpin corner than the driver ahead or the driver behind. But Frisbee is significantly closer to Danny than Danny is to Ozda. And Frisbee is going to have basically a double DRS effect. So he's going to be pretty much hitting terminal velocity down this straightaway. Danny closes in on Ozda. And Frisbee actually lost ground to Danny. And Torpedo has just gotten by Ryan Hurricane. Oh, but he's not able to hold on to the position. And now Higsby is there. And Higsby is going to try and fight back on the outside. Can't make anything stick yet. These 3 continue to fight. Torpedo has to be really careful when it comes to car positioning because he needs to maximize his attack against Ryan Hurricane, but not lose a position to Higsby like he's going to do right now. Very excellent job by Higsby to get by, and now it's Fletch's turn. Fletch has 9 seconds of time penalty, as does Torpedo and Higsby. He might be able to capitalize if one of those 2 make a mistake again. Meanwhile, farther up in the top 3, Frisbee closed in within a 1/5 of a second, but had to back off because there wasn't a real good place for him to overtake. Danny has fallen off to more than a second away from Ozda again. That is exactly what Frisbee wants to see. No driver has gotten more than 9 seconds of time penalty yet. I'm sure that will change before the race is over, but at least in my mind, that speaks a lot about the quality of race and car control today, considering that no one has had more than 9 seconds today. Danny once again gets within 10 second, of Ozda and should have DRS going down the main straight, but Frisbee is closer to Danny once more. Danny didn't get it. Danny did not get a chance to engage DRS that time, but Frisbee did. Danny is closing on Ozda again on the straightaway, but now the top three are all starting to piece apart from each other. Oh, and Elfin Starfish has had an incident. Elfin Starfish has had an incident on the racetrack. He is back underway. It looks like the car may have spun, and it took him a little bit of time to get going again. I don't see any serious damage on the machine. Meanwhile, as we put our focus once more, Torpedo has gotten back by Higsby for the 5th position. He is now going to begin putting his focus on Ryan Hurricane once more. Frisbee on the soft tire compounds trying to make something happen against two faster cars on much, much harder tires. A little bit farther back, this is for points. Dave Ewart has caught Hazel. Not really in a position to make an overtake yet, but he is significantly faster in these straights and the high-speed sections on the racetrack. Danny is just at the fastest lap of the day as he is now closed right up to Ozda's rear end. Ooh, Hazel locks up a little bit, and that brings Dave Ewart right underneath them, but now he spits the rear of that Mercedes sideways, can't do anything yet. This might be Danny's chance to make a move for the lead. Right underneath Ozda, within 3/10. Within 2/10 at the end of the straightaway. He looks to the outside. They're going to be side by side for a lead, but Danny locks up the front tires trying to keep everything in line, and that means that Frisbee will close back in. Dave Ewart's still right there behind Hazel, trying to make something happen here. Oh, and he just ran right into the back of him! Misjudged the braking zone. Dave Ewart runs right into the back of Hazel, and now there is significant front wing damage on that Mercedes. Meanwhile, a little bit farther up, Higsby has caught Fletch. And Torpedo is closing in on Ryan Hurricane once more. Torpedo setting up for a potential lunge, thinks better of it though, but he thinks he might be a little bit better on this next straightaway. And here's something else to take note of. Frisbee is now gradually falling out of the DRS range of Ozda and Danny ahead. He's still within DRS range now, but it looks like Danny is just continuing to put pressure on Ozda, and the two of them are going back to trying to outrun the rest of the field. Now, Frisbee, give him credit, is doing much better to keep up with them than Ryan Hurricane did earlier, but it still is showing to be very, very difficult because he's running the soft, fastest tire compounds, has maximum use of DRS, and is still barely able to hold on to the back of them. This has basically become a battle once more where Danny is trying to push Ozda, and Frisbee is just trying to capitalize if one of them make a mistake. Another lockup from Danny, though. Torpedo once again sees Ryan Hurricane there, but Fletch is ready to capitalize as well. Alpha Starfish gets back by level 6 Beastian. That's about for 10th and 11th positions. Ooh, a little bit of a bobble and mistake from Torpedo. This is Fletch's chance. He's looking at the outside. He's going to get it, but will he be able to hold on to it for very long? Oh, he's trying. Torpedo gets a little bit crisscross from the arrow wake of Fletch ahead. Now Torpedo has another time penalty against him. And now Fletch, who is on soft tires, might have a chance to go up against. Here we are for the lead, though. Danny has just gotten by Ozda. I didn't catch it, sadly, until the very end. But now Danny has gotten back by Ozda, and Frisbee is putting the pressure on Ozda now. Ozda has DRS and ERS that he can utilize against Danny. He's closing on the straight, but he's not closing fast enough unless he wants to make a huge dive. He thinks better of it. But now Ozda is back behind Danny. And Frisbee is right there in the mix once more. Ozda, another time penalty for track violations, and with that, it might be over because Danny only has 3 seconds of time penalties. Ozda now with 9 seconds. I don't see any way he's going to be able to get by Danny and then get 6 seconds away from him. The race for the win might be over, but Frisbee still wants to make some interesting stuff happen at the front. Oh, and Frisbee goes around, and he smacks the inside wall. And he's on track right in the middle of the field. He's got to be very careful getting going again. But he is underway, and the damage is not terminal. He's able to continue. But now the battle for the lead is back to just being Ozda and Danny only. Ozda has the DRS-ERS combo they can use against Danny on the start-finish straight, but Danny much better entry onto that front straightaway. Now it's the run down to Al Rouge Redillion once more. Oh, and Elephant Starfish has just had an instant going through the last corner as well. Now Ozda is back to fighting with Danny for the race lead. No pressure from behind, but now the circumstances have changed. Ozda is the one chasing Danny, and now Ozda will be the one suffering the effects of the arrow wake from the McLaren ahead. Frisbee, all the way down to 11th after running for so long in the top 3, has now fallen to 11th, but he is on medium tires that will likely try and make last to the end of the race. Fletch trying to close in on Higgs before those soft tires are rendered completely useless by age. Fletch and Elephant Starfish will both likely have to pit one more time before the end of the race because I do not see any way those tires will be able to last the ending 20 laps of the event. Meanwhile, the battle for the lead has pretty much concluded. Danny has finally gotten ahead of Ozda and almost immediately runs more than a second away. Now Ozda needs to do whatever he can to get more than 9 seconds ahead of Ryan Hurricane. Because Ozda, with 9 seconds of time penalty and Ryan Hurricane having none, it means that for right now, Ryan Hurricane could still walk out of here in second. But for the championship, this is going to be perfect for Danny because unless he makes a big series of mistakes, it would have to be either a complete crash or multiple track violations. He is going to walk out here with the race win and continue to add to his championship lead. Higsby working on Torpedo as he has now walked away from Fletch a bit. I think Fletch's tires are beginning to fall off. Higsby is now within half a second. Now within a third of a second of Torpedo. On the straights, Higsby seems to be falling off of Torpedo just a bit. Higsby has DRS on Torpedo on the straight. And that is very, very crucial for him trying to make an attempt for 4th position. Ooh, a big lockup from Higsby. And that's not going to help him try and run down Torpedo. But then Torpedo makes a mistake on the corner exit. And then Higsby makes a mistake in the corner with no name. And now Fletch might be brought back into the mix. But again, Fletch now has tires that are going to be falling away and just be getting worse and worse as this goes on. So, I don't know how it's going to work for him. A little bit farther back, Frisbee is closing on Elephant Starfish, and this would be for the last points playing position. Frisbee's closed in and now going around the outside. Those medium tires really working some work for him, and Frisbee is now back in the points-paying positions. Far cry from the 3rd spot that he was in when he crashed. And he is still 10 seconds off from Beastien, who is 9th. But he is now beginning his charge back up to the field as Higsby is back within a third of a second of Torpedo. Torpedo has spent so much time trying to defend against Higsby that the advantage that his tires would have had over Ryan Hurricane in the top 3 has now fallen away. And Torpedo seems to be stuck in 4th and might even fall lower than that if Higsby can just make it work. Fletch really is benefiting massively from all this, because as these two continue to run and they keep making mistakes, it keeps Fletch within the DRS range, and that lets him artificially extend the tire life just a little bit more, because it makes up for the lack of time in the corners by giving him good straightaway speed and helping neutralize the lap times overall. So his lap times will be a little bit closer to what they would be on fresh tires. Is it perfect? Is it ideal? No, but every little bit helps at this point, because now, as we're looking at about 10 laps, more like 9.5 laps to go at this point, if we were to go ahead and pit now, which I do maintain that Fletch and Elephant Starfish will both likely have to do, but if you're going to pit again, you will want to minimize the amount of time you lose as much as possible. If you jump in, just change tires and get out and make it as fast as you can, and just run 2 or 3 really quick laps at the end of the race, you might not only be able to get a reasonable position of 9th or 10th, you might still be able to get the fastest lap point, especially when the 3 fastest drivers of the day, Danny, Ozzy, and Ryan Hurricane, are all on the hards. Higsby around the outside of Torpedo. And now Torpedo has fallen to 5th. It's not over yet, I imagine, but this is great for Fletch. A little bit farther down the order, Frisbee and Elfin Starfish have not stopped their fighting yet, and they've actually brought Dave Ewart into the fray as well. Oh, and Elfin Starfish goes around! And the Haas driver spins around, trying to put the power down a little bit too aggressively, going downhill. He is back underway, and thankfully he was able to keep the car from being destroyed. But a massive incident, and he's going to have to pit to repair the damage to the tires now. Oh, and Danny has just earned another time penalty. Thing is, he still has 3 seconds less of time penalties compared to Ozda. And Dave Ewart has just gotten by Frisbee on the outside, but they make a little bit of contact. Oh. The thing is, though, right now, Dave has the soft tires that Frisbee only has mediums. So Dave is going to be faster and faster for a while. Farther up, once again, as we focus on this battle. Wow, Torpedo really off circuit there. And it's letting Flesh come in closer and closer. So it seems like the car and the tires are beginning to get away from the Red Bull driver right now. Oh, and Mr. Anderson has just gone extremely wide off circuit there in Sector 2. And he might, I'm not saying he will, but he now is running the risk of falling out of the points-paying positions. He's still in 8th right now, but he has Beastian behind him. And Beastian is on medium tires. The difference is, Anderson is on hards that will last him to the end. They're still in relatively good condition. Beastian is trying to push those mediums way farther than anyone has all day long. Torpedo has fallen away from Higsby, and now Fletch is the one working on him. Ooh, and Beeson really sideways putting the power down coming onto the main straight. But Fletch has DRS on Torpedo, and Torpedo still has DRS on Higsby. Now Hazel has another time penalty for track violations. This is the most active battle on track for the moment. You can see them getting side by side there for just a moment. But for now, Torpedo still has the advantage over Fletch. But both of their tires are squealing in agony. And I don't know how in the world they're keeping up with Higsby, because Higsby's making this look easy, but he's not really pulling away at the same time. A little bit farther back, Frisbee and Dave Ewart continuing their fight for the last points-paying position. Mercedes on the soft tire compound and had DRS on the straight, but it wasn't enough to get him by the Williams. There's a chance that both Mercedes drivers could walk out here with points, but Dave needs to do his part and get ahead and stay ahead of the Williams. Meanwhile, Fletch, right there, he's looking to the outside of Torpedo for the 5th position. A crossover from Torpedo is not going to hold up Fletch very much, and with extremely worn softs, he's going to go to the outside and make the overtake stick. So now Torpedo has plummeted to the 6th position. But the thing is, Torpedo will have DRS and ERS. They can use that. Okay, he's not even going to wait for that. He's going to make the crossover in the hairpin. So Torpedo goes back up in the 5th. Torpedo gets really, really sideways and extremely squirrely, and there's a virtual safety car, and Dave Ewart in the other Mercedes has had an incident, and we are under a virtual safety car. Frisbee has to come into the pits for the damage. There must have been some contact between Frisbee and Dave that took Dave in the Mercedes out of the race, and the chance for Mercedes to earn points for both their drivers has now come to a close. So now the focus goes back to the battle for 4th, 5th, and 6th. As we go green once more and DRS has been re-enabled. Torpedo right there behind Fletch, wanting to get that position back. Torpedo squeezes by on the outside of Fletch coming out of the corner, and he's actually going to be able to walk by him without too much of an issue. And Elfin Starfish has just had an incident there in Sector 2. It's not anticipated to be anything that will cause an incident, as he's already going back underway. Fletch still there. This is the most active battle on circuit right now. Meanwhile, there is a battle going on for the 2nd position. This is Ryan Hurricane trying to make something happen on Ozda. Ozda is gradually falling off pace with these hard tire compounds, and it's let Ryan Hurricane close in. Fletch has fallen off from Torpedo just a little bit. The tire is really taking a toll on the AlphaTauri. And while all this has happened, Higsby has opened up a 2-second gap over Torpedo, and Higsby is actually trying to close in on the battle between Ozda and Ryan Hurricane farther up the grid. So Fletch continuing to slug it out with Torpedo. Going down to the Al Rouge Resilient Complex once more. He's close enough to utilize DRS-CRS combination again to try and close in on the Red Bull. And meanwhile, Ryan Hurricane has just snuck by Ozda. Oh, and Elfin Starfish has had another incident in Sector 2. I don't see anything. Oh, and he goes into the dirt. He's back underway already. Oh, and Hazel has just had an incident. The car is stranded and off circuit there. And this means that as long as Elfin Starfish doesn't kill himself, he might still be able to take home points today. And we are under a virtual safety car again. We're going to try and get Hazel in here to see what happened. Oh, this is interesting. Although it was under virtual safety car, Danny was actually held up for just a little bit of time there by Elfin Starfish. But anyways, now it is Danny's race to lose as he's looking to cruise off in these last 3 laps to extend his lead in the points. Ooh, wow! Ryan Hurricane gets really sideways, putting the power down, coming out of the hairpin. He's going to lose a bunch of time and let Ozda come back into play. Torpedo closed in on Higsby. Level 6 Beastie has come into the pits. Ozda cruises by Ryan Hurricane on the straightaway. Torpedo keeps making mistakes, and that lets Fletch, despite the fact that he has terrible tires right now, it keeps letting him close in. Ten drivers left on the track, and it's looking like all 10 of them will score points at the end of the day. Elfin Starfish came in, put on fresh tires, and he's going for the fastest lap of the race point. Ryan Hurricane trying to close in just a little bit on Oz to see if he can overtake the AlphaTauri as Fletch. Torpedo has come into the pits. Torpedo has front wing damage. He's coming into the pits and more than likely will try and throw on softs and try and go for the fastest lap point for the very last lap. Oh no, he's not. He's serving a drive-through. He was I didn't catch the word, but apparently Torpedo was caught speeding under the virtual safety car, has to mandatory stop, and because of that, he will fall to 6, well behind his rival Fletch. Ozda and Ryan Hurricane continuing their own little spat for second. But Ryan Hurricane doesn't need to worry too much, because as long as he doesn't earn any time penalties, he is going to get second without issue. The frustrating thing for Ryan Hurricane is that if Danny was to get one more 3-second time penalty, Ryan would step in a position to win the race. But it does not look like that's going to happen, and Danny will cruise off to an easy victory and continue his grip slightly, but will be a strengthening of his grip on the points lead. All the other battles on track have pretty much dissipated. And of interest to me, at least, is that Higsby, Flesh, and Torpedo all have 15 seconds penalties amongst themselves. In turn, meaning that those three will not change spots with each other. Mr. Anderson is 10 seconds out from Torpedo, but he has 6 seconds worth of penalties. So Mr. Anderson is not likely to jump him. In fact, I don't see any drivers that are going to do a serious jumping or changing in positions based on how time penalties are, except for Ozda plummeting all the way to 3rd rather than 2nd, where he currently is. Actually, no, I'm wrong, because Ozda has 9 seconds of penalty, and he is currently 7.5 seconds out. He will fall to roughly 16 seconds off the lead. He could fall all the way to 5th or maybe even 6th place, but I think he's going to fall to 5th place at the end of this. Although he's had top 3 pace, it looks like he might not get a chance to properly stand on the podium. But with that said, though, the drivers from 4th to 6th all have 15 seconds time penalty, so I guess that might not be an issue for him. Frisbee and Beastian swapping positions as Beastian comes into the pits on the last lap. A very strange decision, but it looks like he thinks that somehow he's going to get fastest lap. Don't know how that's going to happen. Oh, and Starfish has just bend it. And on the last lap, Elfin Starfish has just ended his race. Now, it was on the last lap, so he will still get points. It was in the last 10% of the race. But Elfin Starfish had at least 4 different accidents, and finally the last one took him out. But this is your race leader, your points leader. And he's going to walk out of here extending his lead in the points. After starting on the pole and leading almost all the laps today, Danny JJ02 will take home the victory with no issue. Here comes Ozda. He will be the second driver across the line, but he will lose second to Ryan Hurricane. Higsby is going to come across the line 4th. Fletch is going to come across the line 5th. Will he overtake Higsby? He will not. And then Torpedo will come across the line in the 6th position. Seventh is going to be Mr. Anderson. So once again, Ferrari brings both of their drivers home in the points, and that will help them in the Manufacturers' Championship at least. And Mr. Anderson finishes 7th. Here comes Frisbee. Despite running a chunk of the race in the top 3, he will only be able to rebound to 8th in the end. The last driver on track is level 6 Beastian, and the Mercedes driver will finally not only finish on the lead lap, but will actually earn 2 points for today's event. And to that, I say bravo to him. But this man right here is your race winner. Danny JJ A02 is going to walk out here with an extended points lead. There is your podium celebration. Going to try one more time to get Danny in here. The fastest lap of the day in the end went to Frisbee 2 in the Williams, so a good rebound from his part. And then for Ryan Hurricane, good job being the only driver to finish the race without an issue of track violations. And here we are, coming into the party right now is our race winner, Danny. Just waiting for him to properly get connected. All right, Danny, go ahead, include your audio. Another victory. How does it feel to stay on the top of the podium once more? Danny, can you hear me? Okay, go ahead, include your audio. How does it feel to take home another victory this season? All right, well, the other good news is that you will have extended the points lead in the championship as well. So congratulations on that also. All right, well, that's the word from your race leader and points leader, Danny, as he's going to wrap up the victory here. Tomorrow, on the main channel for X1, you will have the X1 race, and that will be broadcasted by Kinsey Retro. That will be at 5 p.m. UK time. At the same time, for the alternate channel, I will be covering the X3 race, and at 8 p.m. UK time, it will be the X2 race. All of those events will be at Spa. And then next week, same time, is going to be the XRL race on this channel, again at 8 p.m. UK time. I'll look forward to seeing you guys at those points. Also, real quickly, I did not get to see this earlier until just now, but I do want to go ahead that the head of XRL, or one of the heads of XRL Zola, wants me to personally shout out two of the drivers who make many runs in XRL in general, to Path and Pinkwo. In the Grid Finder series, they have done a very good job taking home a victory in the Invitational number 4 event, so congratulations to both of them. Both of them have made starts in the various series that within XRL. And I also want to give, from me, this isn't just Zola saying this is from me saying it, congratulations to you guys for getting that. But with that in mind, that will pretty much wrap up our broadcasts here at Spa-Francorchamps. Again, tomorrow will be the X1, X2, and X3 events. I look forward to seeing you all then. Until then, though, farewell.